Hey man, say man, we back at it again. It's Key Marcane coming to y'all to be live. Your favorite country cousin, your favorite Mississippian, and your best friend, joined by the beautiful and beautifully talented.
Hey y'all, what's up? It's Ashley FG. Thank you for joining us for another episode of
The Family Tree Podcast. Look, y'all seen her before. Had to bring her right back. Conversation was too spicy. I had to get a glass of milk. I don't think you understand what I'm saying. Dr. Cruz, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we went from talking about the family structure, but today we're going to talk about something that not too many people want to talk too much about because not too many people agree. All right. And that is discipline. But before, for those who may have missed the last episode, for one, you need to go back. But I'm going to have Ashley say some beautiful things about Dr. Cruz, and then we'll get things cracking.
Why not? So just a really quick, brief introduction to Dr. Cruz. Now, we met back in February at Belhaven University, which is where she works. Dr. Cruz is a professor and department chair of the Social Work and Criminal Justice Department at Belhaven. She's been there for about 4 years. She's a licensed licensed clinical social worker. She has her own practice here in Flowood, where she works with individuals, couples, families as well. And she focuses a lot on that trauma, a lot of what we've been talking about in this series. Now, I want to allow you to speak more about your practice as well and your passions. But Dr. Cruz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing me back again. The topics are, you're right, these are topics that are not being talked about.
Yeah.
And just tabletop conversations. So my private practice is in Flowood. It's the River Wellness over on Catherine Drive. So I see individuals, couples, families, really talking about trauma and unpacking that, giving people, holding space with them to kind of work through some life problems. And family of origin counseling, which unpacks everything, even across generations. So that's really good. We try to, give them a service so that they can work with somebody they know, like, and trust. And so that's what we're doing.
One thing I like and respect about Belhaven, it's no secret that, God, Jesus, Christianity is no secret at Belhaven. So you all are able to, talk about different issues or the solutions to different issues still in reference to that. And we know, even when it comes to a lot of motivational speeches and books, a lot of those principles come from the Bible. We know that, right? So one thing that comes to mind when we talk about discipline, the scripture.
Spare the rod for the child.
Okay. So
that wasn't playing, by the way.
It wasn't. So I want to start there. What's your interpretation of that scripture? And what are your beliefs in terms of discipline and the upbringing of our children and our families?
Spicy.
Right. So as far as the scripture goes, I believe my interpretation and my, putting that through my lens as far as my values, I don't believe that it's saying don't discipline your child or, your child. Don't give them structure with rigor, sustain it with rigor, and, or they will be spoiled. I believe it's saying love your children, do give them structure, and be firm. So I get the spare the rod part because that seems more like it's going to be a physical activity or physical event with the child. So I realize that we'll talk about spanking later. Spanking is not off limits even with that scripture, but with Jesus, we're really talking about loving them and loving them well, giving them structure, giving them boundaries, and also allowing for the flexibility of life so that children can be taught the right way, but they will know what obedience looks like. And you can sustain that with rigor as well. So that's what I believe is happening. That's what my interpretation of the scripture is, and for me and my family. But discipline itself, Can I go with the social scientist
Let's go.
perspective?
Let's
So
go.
at this point, over the last 20 to 30 years, we have done a ton of research, at least researchers have, to include the Academy of Pediatrics, who has like 67,000 pediatricians in it. They have done research over the years, and that particular organization is saying, no spanking. Especially not, and there are some pros and cons, so they're saying, do this, you can spank a child. There are some pros, like you, with love, and make sure that it's the right time, right place, measured.
I'm sorry, Dr. Cruz. I don't know why I just chuckled at the idea of spanking with love. I think because I started to think about when parents would say, this hurts me more than it hurts you,
for
to
sure.
spank you, And I don't know if that's related in any way or really what mom and dad meant when they said that, but it's like, to discipline, understanding, the purpose and the goal with it, but it hurting the parent more than it hurts me. So it hurts mom or dad more emotionally than it hurts me physically. I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that just really brought about that phrase that we hear a lot.
I believe that I've heard that too. It hurts me more than it hurts you. It seems like the parent is talking about something emotional, and they're using using this method to take care of it. And if it hurts you emotionally, it shouldn't be a spanking with it. We should do something else. That's at least my thought. But they're saying that, I'm so disappointed in you. You're, by what you did, that I'm going to have to spank you and shock you and let you understand that, that it hurt me that much. But there's a disconnect with emotions and this action of actually like striking a child. That is a disconnect. And so, even in a therapy room, I'm constantly looking out for that, because sometimes I do ask parents, do you spank your child? Especially if we're in a setting of talking about anger, we're talking about intense emotions. When are these spankings taking place? Because if the emotion is that intense, how do we know what is going to be transferred over to the child? And if you can't measure it, then we actually don't know what's happening. And some of the other side, the downside of spanking in general, is what we know what some of the long-term outcomes are. So in long term, and even research shows this, and it's not a badge or a pat on my back or anything, but I do see a lot of adults who were purportedly spanked as children, but when they describe the spanking and the emotion hits them at 100%, like they're getting spanked right now, they may not have just been a spanking. And it's consistent, and it happens over and over and over again, to the point where the initial reason why they were getting spanked may have occurred years earlier, and it's years later, and they were still getting beat, and then it escalated and continued to escalate. And these were, as the descriptions are given to me, I don't believe that they're exaggerated, but I believe that at the point at which a child can be communicated with, something might be different in that space of trying to actually discipline and do a spanking. But then there's culture. Go pick your switch kind of thing. And then adults actually saying, I got beat mercilessly. I have bruises. I was bleeding. I was all of these things. And I'm okay. I turned out fine.
So they think.
And sometimes it's not fine. And we're finding this out 20 or 30 years later. Sir.
And beyond the household, like, I remember being in school and there was corporal punishment, right? If a kid is acting out, they're going to lay you across their lap, pull them pants down, So, what are your thoughts about that? Like, beyond the home, good. Even in a school system, we were doing this. And some people want to bring it back.
Well, there still is. There is still corporal punishment in schools. They have their rules. It's not abuse,
Okay.
And there's some way that they determine a reasonable circumstance that this should occur. There is a Mississippi code, 371157, that talks about corporal punishment, and people want to bring it back, and for whatever reason. I just can't see that because I don't see how you can take care of a circumstance by striking a child by somebody that's not the parent. Teachers are authoritarians, so they are in authoritative positions. But how else? My thought is, how else can we take care of this? I had somebody talk to me just about 2 weeks ago about the fact that they're in their early 20s, that, they had corporal punishment situations at school, and they got beat twice, once at school and once at home. Because if I have to come pick you up early from school, you're going to get it. So I'm thinking, let's work through that.
Yeah, for sure. Got the paddle and then got home and got the belt. 1,000%.
Yeah. So they're talking about it, and for that individual, it didn't go well because it had to. It started happening so early in life that they grew up, aged chronologically, no problems there, but the idea of feeling worthless and having to be beaten to get some sort of understanding, or beating as communication, the messages never align for them.
That is so good. Because what I was going to actually ask was, like, is it instilling fear in the kid? Like, hey, if I do this, then I'm going to end up getting physically hurt versus anything else from my parent and,
Some kids don't care. And
right.
Some kids don't care, yeah.
Right.
And we got to talk about that, too. How does a kid get to the point where they don't care if they getting corporal punishment, if they getting their head tore out the frame at home? It's like, look, like, do we talk more about their self-esteem and how, like you said, worthless just now? But like, what more goes into that? Because some kids really don't care.
Like, what does that action or that attitude say? Like, what are they saying with that attitude?
So there's a couple of things. One is, so there's corporal punishment, or let's just say anything in a disciplinary realm. So it's supposed to be having a purpose and an intent. But if we're not, if we as adults or whoever's meting out this punishment is not watching for improvement or making sure that whatever the punishment is, it's a consequence for this said action. If nobody's keeping check on that, it just keeps going and going. And, just in a normal frame of psychosocial development, kids just do what they do. We don't know all of the other social issues that go into that circumstance, because it might have, crossed the line to be an abusive. And if it is abuse, it could potentially be trauma, as we talked about before. And if a child is processing trauma, they do act like nothing matters. They're still just trying to survive. They move into this survival space where they do what other people do when they're traumatized. They just get numb. And then on the other side, there might be some true diagnosable situations like, intermittent explosive behavior, where people just kind of look like they just act out, or they disregard authority figures, or they don't follow rules and laws. So there could be any mix of it, but that space of discipline, if we could just manage that part. Some of the other things we may not even be able to control, but if we have that thing, that we can actually control as adults, we should do that. Little kids get popped or spanked sometimes, but as a child gets older, at what point, we teach and talk about when is it okay to start communicating with your child as opposed to just striking. And what I'm looking for particularly is making sure the adult is managed in their emotions, because you don't want your emotions to be transferred. You said the word projected.
Because we be projecting. We as people, right?
Yes.
And like you say, it's so important to check in emotionally like that parent, because parents aren't perfect either, right?
Stress.
They're still a person.
And they have, parents have an incredible amount of stress to deal with. And we just, we don't take it for granted as providers. We want to, to try to work through that space with them. But we don't even know the half of what they have to deal with just to get through day to day. Yeah. And then, how they manage their stress. So on the parenting style.
Ooh, I have a question. Okay, so understanding that a parent goes through so much within a day, right? How important is it for a child to teach a child to be considerate enough to, hey, be a kid, but be mindful, like daddy or mommy, whatever the case may be, so that I don't have to act out in such, is it a way to, I guess, co-manage behavior? Is that makes sense?
Are you talking about between a parent and the child?
Yes. So a child understands where they know not to do certain things because they don't want the parent to come out of the stresses that they have on their own to discipline them.
Okay. I'm clarifying as I'm thinking through this with you, because what I believe I want to say to you in response is, unfortunately, number one, if depending on the age of the child, they can't take the parent responsibilities.
Right.
So the parent will have to work through that. But the other part is, this works, consistency. Consistency in rigor and sustaining how we deal with these circumstances. So what I find to be most troubling is little to no boundaries. And then when there are boundaries put in place, they're very rigid. So a child gets a little bit confused about what am I dealing with right now? What's going on? I've overstepped a boundary and I shouldn't have did that. I don't know what's going to happen to me. And I want to do better, but I actually don't know what to do. So consistency helps. Having healthy boundaries with your children. We don't want parentified children. We don't want little ones having to take on our responsibility. Now, there's a manner of stress that just easily transmitted, even if you don't want it to. Maybe some tension, or you're quiet, you're not talking, and the child just talking, so they might not know. But we do want to manage that space of the boundaries. So the parents will have their boundaries and their parent system, and then there'll be some boundaries between the children. But more often, they respond to consistency, firm rigor. Just stay firm. And it's also hard for parents to stay firm sometimes. You're so tired. Some days you're just like, whatever. I don't know, and then everything is kind of going crazy, and it's really hard to maintain through that space. So we talk a lot about coping and trying to work through those times.
So,
okay, I'm gonna jump in because we've talked about this idea of cellular memory.
yeah, for sure.
Oh.
All right, so you know what I mean when I say, okay, and I first heard this phrase, Ayanla, she mentioned it, just talking about cellular memory. Black people, the reason why we may do certain things is just sort of innate within us. And I wonder when it comes to discipline, because you talked about cultural, right? Like, it may be a meme on social media, or it may be a conversation that we have with each other, but we know, it's largely known, that black people, They discipline different. Black mamas and daddies discipline different than white mamas and daddies. And it comes off more aggressive or, more physical. And I'm just sitting over here wondering, like, cellular memory, discipline, physical, beatings, does it coincide in some way? Because you think about just black people in general for centuries, physically have taken on a lot of beatings. Emotionally has taken on a lot of beatings, right? So is it something in us innately that makes us, I don't know, discipline more aggressively and physically as black people spiraling from racism and slavery?
So there is some, we know, and we talk a lot about generational trauma, and kind of what you took and what it took to make you. And there was a period of time where we looked at that as resilience. We're strong, we came through and we survived. But we do have some cultural things that are they're just historical, and they do go all the way back to slavery. But our parents, grandparents, and just generations before us, they disciplined in certain ways, and we learned from what we saw. And we do have muscle memory. We do have what we call epigenetic trauma that's passed down.
Okay.
Toxic stress.
Okay.
Yeah, epigenetic, when it's passed down, right.
Okay.
So, and then we have toxic stress that is passed on from generation to generation.
Okay.
And you will continue to do what you saw. You will continue to do what you learned. And sometimes there's no there's no threshold for it, and the part that lies in sometimes it's the unconscious and the subconscious is if a parent goes to beat a child and they're transmitting all of that energy, muscle memory, and all of that, they're going from their own experience. So, you might hear a parent say, it wasn't as bad as what happened to me. And then what happened to them might be something just right short of death. Well, you can't do that to a 6-year-old kid that probably just picked up a piece of candy in a store or something. So it really just depends. There is a generational piece to it, unfortunately. So all these years later, we're still learning, unlearning, deconstructing, absolutely. And trying to find other ways to learn more about ourselves, so that we can engage better with each other. And I see a lot of this growth happening, that people are trying to learn more about themselves so they could be better to their children. So we went through the phase of, I just want my kid to have more than I had, to have.
Those tangible things.
Yeah, but it's about, how about feeling different, thinking different, and observing the world different. Your lens, your worldview is different if you look through lens, and as they get older, we just want things to be better. Discipline.
So, I read this book called Healing Your Aloneness, and it talks about channeling your inner child. It's a beautiful book.
Yes, let's go there. Absolutely, I got that on the shelf at the office.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
When you talked about like just getting better for self, right? I thought about that as you were speaking. And my question to you is, how can one better discipline themselves in order to not take so much out on their kid, or anyone for that matter, for the subject, for the kid, to their kid? Yeah.
So there is so much to learn about self, no matter when you arrive there. No matter when you arrive there.
Yeah.
So even to the point where now I find that in therapeutic sessions with men and women, they are literally sitting in these big comfortable chairs at my office, being reacquainted with their younger self. Hurt, harmed, bruised, battered, torn. They're identifying with their younger self. Parts of them that you can't get rid of these parts. So and then they've seen it show. They've seen their younger self hurt and vulnerable show up in their adult life. I'm like, they were always there. They're like, okay, now I recognize, this part of myself. And so you'll walk out caring for that younger part of yourself. And you have to acknowledge it. You don't have to tell everybody about it, but you acknowledge, that's part of my younger self, and you get there. But you do have to go through a space where you get to, and we just talk about everything, attachment styles.
Heavy.
Yeah, attachment styles. Identifying your emotions, is always fascinating to me to talk to an adult that did not know they had 8 primary emotions. They're like, no, I live with my anger, my anxiety, my sadness, and my fear. What else, Dr. Cruz? And I'm saying, how about your joy? When was the last time you used it? They're like, what? I haven't used my joy in a while.
Really?
So getting in touch with you, understanding your emotions, and having a coping strategy for each one of them.
I love that.
How do you what's your attachment style? An attachment style is developed in your younger developmental years.
Okay.
Usually, an attachment style has something to do with just about everything as an adult. How you discipline, how you attach to intimate partners, how you engage with people, how you feel about yourself, and then just finding out more about that. How do you feel being able to think about your thinking? You can think and then analyze your own thoughts. Humans can do that. And every single thought you have, you'll have a feeling with it and a behavior, and it goes in that order: thought, feeling, behavior, always. If you think about something, you can't unthink it. It can go to subconscious, unconscious, but you will have that thought with you. Even if you believe you forgot, if we talk enough, it'll come back. So you have to know so much about yourself. And when you talk about discipline, you talk about that anger. Sometimes anger can come out, and just really sitting and going, what's the anatomy of your anger? There's only 4 reasons, really. So hide emotional pain, get your needs met, affect an outcome that you probably don't control, or get somebody to change their behavior.
Dr. Cruz, do y'all take Blue Cross Blue Shield? I'm going to call you on Monday, sis.
So we started talking about discipline, but you have to know,
This is so good.
So
Okay. So you said something that sparked this question, right? For those who may quote unquote forget a thing, how can one remember more of their childhood and things that they went through as a kid? What's a nice process for that?
One, so there is repressed memories. So you'll forget, and they'll get buried somewhere under trauma. But the more, one way to go about it, and we're not going to get all into the neurolingual part of it, but if you begin to feel, and if you become more acquainted with your emotions, you're able to identify them, and you're actually using a range of emotions, sometimes those emotions will awaken memories and thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, the feeling.
Yeah, sometimes, because you remember how you felt,
Yeah.
and then you might be able to unpack the rest of it. But we have process for that. We can sit in, and we'll work through it. And that's true therapy. So, we kind of work through it because we don't know all that is not allowing a person to kind of remember what happened. So, but there's a way to go about it.
Have you read Ask and It Is Given?
I read Ask and It Is Given, yes.
I'm thinking about that as you talk about feelings, because it talks about the emotional guidance system and how you can be able to guide what you feel. And I know, me personally, I want to be a master communicator, and I want to master emotional intelligence. So one of the current books that I'm reading is by Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart.
Oh, that's a new one.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
And it is great.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Really current. So you're there. So Brene is full up on our shelves over at the office too. Excellent way. She is the person for shame, shame and vulnerability and those kinds of things. So that's an excellent place to go and be as far if you're learning. Emotional intelligence is everything. It's deep. But if you can, yes, if you can get to the point where you are emotional intelligent, it is a process, and and for those people like myself, even to be able to come into a space with hold space with somebody for that, you have to go through some of it yourself. You have to get yourself to the point where you have this emotional intellect that's just available to you. So yes,
I love it. So speaking of books, what book or books would you recommend to our cousins out here in the virtual world?
I would certainly recommend Brene Brown, that
For
Atlas
sure.
of the Heart,
Yeah,
just
she
because
nice.
it's a beautiful. It's just the way it's laid out.
It's simplified.
It's simplified. So there is another book. Well, that might be too deep. Intrusive thoughts. Start there, because I'm blanking up right now on what.
Noted.
Noted.
One thing
Yeah.
I'm trying to do in 2022 is read a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one, Atlas of the Heart, and then the one she wrote before.
I can't think of it. But check out her TED Talks too, though.
Ooh, she's back on.
Yeah.
She's definitely back on. Those are good. The other thing that can help, not if people just don't want to go straight to all of the emotional, cognitive space type stuff. Anything that somebody can pick up that is a kind of self-help book. What you're trying to do is just get these cognitions stimulated. So I would even say that if you're a reader, start with what you like. If you haven't read anything in a while, just start with this stimulating this cognition, these thoughts, and imagination and curiosity by doing what you love. The other thing that you do when you read is you have the potential to get quiet.
Yes.
And you can comprehend what you're reading and understand what you're reading, but you also can give yourself, your body, your stress points some rest. And so that's
We don't do that a lot of times, when we're living and going about our day-to-day routine, which is honestly another reason why, I'm wanting to read more for that reason, to give myself a break, because I know 24/7 I'm here, I'm there, I'm doing, I'm thinking, I'm feeling, I want to get lost in something that's outside of my quote-unquote responsibilities, but something that I will receive, in a moment where I can receive, in a moment that I can have for myself, and, just maturation and growth, I think.
excellent.
I think that's really important for us as we get older. When we were younger, oh God, when I was a kid, I read. We would have little reading fairs, or throughout the summers, a competition. I was smoking everybody. But since I got into news and journalism, I'm reading less because it started to feel taxing. Because I'm reading so much, and I would just want a break. So I find myself in films, more visuals. But reading is something that I want to do more of. So I'm glad y'all dropping these.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our viewers are appreciating this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I like that whole reading. You're in a genre.
Oh
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm
That's
looking to
just
master that.
amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So that even motivates me more. What you're saying, that a lot of people don't even know about all of the emotions, all the different feelings that ones have, because they live with so many for so long that they block out the others.
Oh yeah.
So, hey man,
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day, Dr. Cruz.
Yes,
I really could.
we could. Is there any final thoughts? Just going back to the conversation about discipline and discipline in our families, in Black culture. Where are we now, and where do you want to see us on this?
So I believe that first of all, this conversation is, you all talked about doing bigger and better things. And here we are actually having a live talk about discipline. I see this going in a direction of parents are actually thinking more about this process of discipline. They're talking more about communicating with their children or whoever's they're caregiving for, and talking about that. So I believe that they're wanting to do more communicating. The other part is myself. I'm not alone. I have a lot of colleagues who are out in the field in private practice around here in Mississippi and in other states that are saying that parents are asking questions. So I want to let people know that this is safe. You don't, whatever it is you believe you're sitting with and you're sitting alone, as you can ask somebody a question. Most therapists, if you just call them and ask them a question, they'll be willing to answer. So that's available to you. The other point is it's not just therapists and counselors that are talking about these conversations. As soon as you get in front of a professional, it could be a medical provider, they're talking about depression, they're talking about discipline, they're talking about parenting. So that's the way we're going. And we're not just talking about getting in front of a certain person, we're just talking about access in general. If you have access, ask questions to the person that you're in front of. And then culturally, we're opening up. People are calling up and saying, it's time. I'm tired of living the way I live. I want to do something different. I want better for my children. This is women and also men too. So there are, we said in the last segment that there are men leading households. Just the men and some of them men and children. So they are using everything that's available to them. And I found that pretty much fascinating, that people are using their resources. And if your child goes to school, there's a lot of resources available there. There is privacy as well, so make sure that you ask about keeping your information confidential and keeping your information private, which we like a lot. So thank you so much for having a conversation.
Oh my gosh. This is a blessing.
Yeah.
Hey man, every day is a new day to learn how to live. Continue to learn how to live. Continue to learn how to love. Know that you are loved. Know that you are enough. We are all learning as we grow. Okay? You just tapped into another episode of the Family Tree Podcast. I'm Key Marcane, coming to y'all to be live, your favorite country cousin, your favorite Mississippian, and your best friend with the beautiful and beautifully talented
Ashley FG, man. Again, thank y'all for rocking with us. Until next time.
Peace and blessings, love and respect.